Two of my favorite films are The Incredibles and Fantastic Mr. Fox. Not only are they landmarks in cinema, but they're also just a really enjoyable time. And if you take a deep dive into each film, you start to see similar themes on glory days and relationships within the family that are essential to each film. This is The Incredibles and Fantastic Mr. Fox. Analysis in Glory Days. Before we continue, I would like to say how I will be spoiling these movies and that you should see both of these films in order to understand this video better and for your benefit. So, please, enjoy. The Glory Days. What are they, and how do you know what they are? Well, the definition I'm going to be using in this video is that the Glory Days are a brief time in someone's life that end up being the quote-unquote best time of their life. It's a time that reflects nothing going wrong and ultimately leads someone to feel a false sense of happiness. Other people are giving you glory, so to speak. Now, notice how the glory days are a false sense of happiness. This is seen in The Incredibles when Mr. Incredible enjoys the attention and obtains joy through saving others. Now, this may be a good thing at the time, but he ultimately fails to see the bigger picture and ignores all the problems around him, which is why he fails to notice the worsening superhero situation until he is sued. Now, this brings up another interesting point on how the glory days are based on other people's perspective. The same thing can be viewed in Fantastic Mr. Fox, as Mr. Fox is just obsessed with being fantastic in everyone's eyes, so he steals chickens and squabs without understanding the risks. And it's only when his wife says that he has to find a new job because she's pregnant, he's pulled out of the glory days. So both of the characters' glory days offer them an escape from a world they do not want to perceive. And that's the primary idea of glory days. A period of time that offers false happiness and is just continuous luck that allows nothing to go wrong in this character's life. But as seen in both of these films, this luck soon runs out. Now, as the luck of our characters run out and the glory days start to leave, they're ultimately thrust into a decision that pushes them back into reality. This is seen when Mr. Incredible is asked to stop crime fighting and when Mr. Fox is asked to find a new job. Both characters choose to leave these days behind since reality is finally set in, but if reality wasn't a factor for both of these characters, ultimately they both would have continued to live the glory days as seen later in each film. So, after a period of time in which the glory days have left our characters and the sense of happiness has faded, 15 years and 12 years respectively, each character is put into a situation where they are not relatively happy. For Mr. Incredible, it's a day job, and for Mr. Fox, it's a hole in the ground working for a newspaper. Each character's luck has finally run out, and they both look for a way to relive the glory days they so desperately desire. Now, at this point in both films, each character faces a similar choice. And honestly, the movies start to blend. Tired of feeling poor, Mr. Fox looks for a new home and decides to do one last job for himself against Bogus Bunsen Bean. The same is with Mr. Incredible, who saves people with a police scanner, and when he finds out about this opportunity to become Mr. Incredible again, he takes it. The important part about these two stories is that both involve themselves. They do this for themselves and not for the families they have at home, which is very interesting. Now, as soon as each character springs back into action to relive the glory days, they find success and end up finding the same sense of false happiness they found the first time. This leads them to again experience the glory days 2.0. But this brings up an important question of why didn't they do this earlier? And I think it has something to do with actual happiness. In between the period of the glory days and deciding to relive the glory days, each character was starting a family and getting married, which I think allowed them to experience real happiness within their lives. It's only when each character's lives start to slow down again, they revert back to the glory days mode. As the glory days are successfully relived, both Mr. Fox and Mr. Incredible can stop their search for individual happiness now, but they don't because they want to keep living this fantasy. And as they continue to relive the glory days, as before, their luck runs out. Mr. Fox and Mr. Incredible are forced to face the consequences of their individual desires, and are once again up against reality. At this moment, I would like to point out how each film is again acting in a very similar way. Both Mr. Fox and Mr. Incredible face hatred, pain, and distrust from others and their families, and ultimately must face reality again. And both movies follow similar story beats at this point and focus on the hero's journey and development. But through this second coming of the glory days, each character comes to the realization of the idealization of these former days, and understand that these days were ultimately about themselves instead of the happiness right out there for them. They realize this at key points in each movie, and I would like to point out in Fantastic Mr. Fox the waterfall scene. It's short, sweet, but it gets to the point and shows how Mr. Fox has changed. The same thing happens in The Incredibles right before the final battle scene, where Mr. Incredible says how he doesn't want to lose his family. They both come to terms with understanding that they have families now, and it's not just them. At the end of each film, both characters end similarly. Mr. Incredible ends his journey by understanding that the glory days are behind him and accepts his family and the happiness they give him. Mr. Fox does the same and robs a grocery store, but this time with his family. And it shows how the glory days weren't really their glory days. Now is their glory days because they have families and people who care about them. Each film shows how each character still has the same desire for their glory days and the same little quirks and personality traits, but these come after the true happiness from their families. And ultimately, each film takes a look at the glory days in a negative light, stating how this period does not bring true happiness since it revolves around themselves. In other words, the glory days aren't even that glorious.